Hi everyone, and welcome to another Griniflix Adventure 8 video. Today I'm going to be talking about Leica film cameras. There are three versions that I have here, and there is something significant about all of them. There is a history behind all of them. The three cameras are, ranging in age, the Leica IIIf. This is a 1955 vintage camera. The lens itself is probably similar age, maybe a couple of years older, 57, I think, from the serial numbers. We've also got a Leica M4, is around the 1975 mark. And again, the lens is actually an older lens. I think this lens is probably even about 10 years older. This one's a 5cm or 50mm f3.5. On top of that, I've got a light meter. Now, this is not a selenium light meter. It is actually a battery-operated light meter. And then this one here is the Leica M6, the TTL. The M6 has through the lens metering. And there's some fundamental differences, and I'll go through all those differences as well. This is not the most comprehensive Leica film camera review. There's a lot of other YouTubers and content creators that can produce a much better detail on each one of these. However, this is my experience on the different Leica cameras. Where I first started to get an interest in Leica cameras was when I was hired as an apprentice photographer, wedding photographer, back when I was in my early 20s. And the wedding photographer only used Leica cameras. He only used a 35mm f2 lens, and the entire wedding was shot with that one lens and the Leica camera. So that was my first experience, and like most things in life, you don't necessarily appreciate what you have in your hands at the time because of lack of experience. And I didn't really understand too much about all the different options as far as cameras and lenses, but that's what I was taught in those early days. And it's only in recent years where I've gone back into my heritage, into my past experience, and started to buy some of these older cameras to reconnect with the past to a certain extent. It's reconnecting with that past and then spending that time to actually, I suppose it's in the passage of time where you get experience. And now I've had a lot more experience in all sorts of photography, particularly in video and film photography these days, with my YouTube content. And Griniflix Adventure 8, and if you haven't already subscribed, do subscribe, do thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Now, so continuing on. So when I was given the camera by the photographer to shoot the wedding, the camera would have been an M4 or an M5, and I can't recall, to tell you the truth, which it was. I'm sort of thinking it might be an M5. How I became reconnected with the Leica cameras was obviously trying to find a Leica camera in the first place. And one of the challenges I had was trying to find just a reputable source of knowledge. And I guess this is, if you're buying some old used equipment, regardless what it is, that is one of the challenges, is trying to find someone that you can trust, somewhere where you can get some information, and somewhere where you can buy something that is, in your own mind, good value, both in the quality that you expected and the price that you paid. So after doing some research, and then here in Australia, I stumbled across someone by the name of Peter, coincidentally also, who is a collector and very knowledgeable and is absolutely passionate about all forms of photography and equipment. And in visiting him, I've become familiar with what he has available in equipment and his love for photography and everything to do with photography. So I've teamed up with Peter, and what I'll do is through my web channel, through peterzellums.com, I'll make some of his equipment that I review also available for sale through my website. I can't guarantee its availability other than it is there. If you are interested, then please do make contact with me through my website. Let's work backwards from the newest to the oldest. So this is the M6, and I do have a older lens, a 35mm f2 Summicron lens on it right now. And I did actually do a review of this lens relative to the Summilux 1.4 and the Voigtlander 35mm 1.4, and the link is somewhere up there as well. So that gave me a reference to what this vintage lens is like relative to a newer lens and also to the Voigtlander lens. So this would have been very similar wedding camera that I use. I think again, this is the M6. This one was manufactured in 1998. It's probably the most conventional modern Leica film camera. It has through the lens metering. It's very straightforward. You wind it on, you take the shot. It couldn't be anything more simple. There's a rewind, shutter speeds, they go from 1 second right up to 1,000. And obviously B, where you can have the lens open, the shutter open for as long as you like. Changing film is pretty straightforward on these Leica cameras, which is just undo the clip there. And that slides out. The great thing about the M6 is that it is pretty much easy to load. You don't have a loading spool that you take out. It's actually in there all the time. And all you do is you place the film in between those lugs there. It's a system that works really well, and you can change your film very quickly. I haven't shot any film with this yet, so I still need to put a roll of film through it. So I guess this is our reference as far as if you were to buy a film camera now, do you go for a new one or do you go for one that's 20 years old like this 1998 M6 and get into film photography? Now, believe it or not, when I was a wedding photographer, and because I only use the 35mm lens, I never actually changed the lens on the body. I can't believe it. I was only with the photographer for a couple of years, but I guess that's what it was. So to change the lens, it's pretty straightforward with all these Leica cameras. You press the button there and you rotate. The M6 is a M mount as opposed to a screw mount. So that's the 35mm on the M6. The M4. This particular one has a collapsible lens. So let's have a look how that works. It's just a matter of rotating that and then putting that down. The M4 is very similar to the M6, and it is a M mount. So I can put the 35mm lens on this one as well, and the collapsible one on the M6. That's a great thing about it. They're all interchangeable, and now the M6 is nice and compact. And now the M4 has the wedding lens on, the 35 f2. It's very similar. The actual M4 has an advantage over the M6. It's got a self-timer on it. It's just a matter of clocking the shutter, pressing the button there, takes a shot. Otherwise, everything else is much the same. Changing the film is the same as M6. The light meter can be attached and detached. You can obviously use this without the light meter, in which case you need to have, you can use your phone. I mean, there's a aperture, light meter, shutter speed, ISO app on here. Take a reading, take a shot. And that's giving me a reading straight away. So at ISO 25, the f-stop is 1.6 and the light and the shutter speed is 100. So in this case here I'm using, let's say I'm using 200 ISO, and the lens that I have is f2. Then the shutter speed I should be using is 1/400th of a second. So you can see that Your phone can be used as a light meter. If I was to use the light meter, then that should give me about the same reading. Position my light there. So then what you do is you line up your f2 with the needle and the marker there, which is sort of on that black line there. And that means it's suggesting that the shutter speed should be 250th of a second at f2 at 200 ISO. It's a bit fiddly. I'm not sure which is actually easier to use, whether it be the phone or this light meter. The great thing about it is that the batteries in here would last a couple of years. The light meter on the M6 is much easier because you've got a LED in there and you basically just have 2 arrows pointing one way or the other to show you whether it's going to be overexposed or underexposed. Okay, this is the Leica IIIf, so Leica with 3 strokes, and then F, 1955. The lens that's on here is the 5cm f2.8. I haven't tested this lens yet, so I'd be interested to see how this compares to 5cm 3.5. Whether the quality is similar. Obviously one is faster than the other, and what the contrast is like. I have tested this. There is some reviews, film versus digital, where I used the M4 with this lens. This is a screw thread, so it's just a matter of unscrewing. Like, there we go. And then you've got, basically, there it is, there's a camera. So there's no winding lever as such as on the M4 and the M6. This has got the old wind on, and you can actually see how the curtain is wound on. And as you wind it on, when you press the trigger, the curtain moves, and that's your shutter. One fundamental difference between this camera and the M4 and the M6, other than the lens thread, this is a rangefinder camera, but it's different. See, with this one you've got one view piece, and the rangefinder element in there is actually incorporated in your viewfinder as well. So not only can you frame the shot, but within the little square within the rangefinder view, you can actually see how to actually focus it as well. Here you've got 2 view pieces. One is for framing. You can't do a preview and change the frame lines as you can with these, so even though you've got a 35mm lens on or 50mm lens, you can actually view what other frame lines there are for the different lenses. But I guess you can sort of, as you become more familiar with your camera, you can guess your frame lines as you become familiar with the lenses that you're using. The one on the right here shows you the frame lines for that particular lens, and then the one on the left, close to the left side of the camera, is that's connected to these 2 lenses here. That gives you that split image. So as you focus, those images come together. Once it's together, that point is in focus as far as the distance from your camera. Got my then focus. I can go back to framing my shot. That's it. I took a shot. Now I don't have a light meter attached to this, but I do have this old light meter here, which is a Western, I can hardly read what it says here now, Western Master 3, Western Master 3. Oh. Now, with these old selenium cells, they do deteriorate over time. I'm guessing this light meter must be about 50 years old, but it's still working, so it's still coming up with a reading. You can see that using manual light meters takes longer. But here, there's no batteries. This doesn't require batteries. This doesn't require batteries. You can go hiking, you can take good shots with film. No power. Old school. That's the advantage of using these older cameras. So, that's it. That's it for this little review. 3 Leica cameras, all slightly different, ranging in ages by about 50 years. 1950, 55, 1998, and really not dissimilar to 2020. And then 1975, the f4 with its separate light meter as well. I hope you found this interesting, entertaining, informative. Do like, really appreciate if you do. It's this one here, the IIIf, that is actually for sale. And also this lens, the collapsible lens, the 5 centimeter 2.8. And I will put this on my website, peterzalums.com. And if you are interested, please do contact me, and then we can have a chat about what this might be worth, both to you and also to Peter, and whether we can actually create a sale for you and for Peter where everyone is happy. There you go. Please do subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks. Cheers.